Chapter 11 Traditional Leadership Approaches by Ashley Bell. What is leadership? Leadership as process involves the use of non-coercive influence to direct or coordinate a group towards a common goal, while leadership as property is the set of characteristics attributed to someone who is perceived to use influence successfully. Leadership versus management. Leadership and management are related but very much not the same. Management is planning, budgeting, and creating detailed steps on how to achieve a goal, while leadership is the ability to have a vision, aligning people and motivating them towards that common goal. Early approaches of leadership. The early approaches to leadership believed that a manager or leader had fixed traits or behavioral aspects, and that a leader could not change and was either good in a particular situation or not, and there was no variation. The trait approach was where researchers focused on the traits of a leader and developing methods of measuring them. A list of characteristics that successful leaders had started to be formed. Though the list grew too long and soon they realized there was no scientific standing or capability to measure them successfully, and the theory was scrapped. The trait approach was brought back in recent years with a limited trait list that had limited list of measurable traits, such as emotional intelligence, drive, motivation, honesty and integrity, self-confidence, cognitive ability, knowledge of business, and charisma. Behavioral approach. In 1940, researchers started to look at leadership as an observable activity known as the behavioral approach. The approach was looking at what behaviors effective leaders tended to have and how they differed from less successful ones. Two different studies happened about the same time by two different colleges observing this theory. Michigan and Ohio State studies. Michigan studied the pattern of behavior and successful leaders by interviewing subordinates. It focused on two main behaviors: job-centered behavior, which focuses on procedures and performance, and employee-centered behavior, which focuses on attempts to build effective work groups among employees. While the Ohio studies followed the same basis, they termed it as the following: consideration behavior, which focuses on employees' feelings and ideas, and initiating structure, which clearly defines leader-subordinate roles and clearly states what is expected of them. Situational leadership. It began to look at leadership as something that can change based upon the situation or employee. They studied the key behaviors used per situation and how the leader may interact differently from one employee to the next based on certain needs. This is what we focus on more heavily today and started the research for our main leadership models. LPC theory. It was developed by Fred Fiedler and attempts to find a match between the leader's personality and the complexities of each situation they may face. This theory was originally known as the contingency theory leadership, but was later changed to the LPC theory, or least preferred coworker, due to the original name being too generic. In this theory, they look at who the leader's least preferred coworker is, or who they work the least well. The leadership is asked to answer her 16 questions on a scale from 1 to 8 about their least preferred coworker. Fiedler believes that the characteristics you dislike about that coworker say more about the leader's personality rather than the personality of the coworker. Fiedler also looked at situational favorableness in order from most to least favorable and how the leader should behave based on each. The first one, the most highly ranked, is leader-member relations, which is how much a subordinate trusts, respects, and has confidence in their leader. The second is task structure, how routine and well understood the task at hand is. The third and least favorable is leader position power, the amount of power the leader actually has. Vroom's decision tree approach. The most common used theory to date was proposed by Victor Vroom. It attempts to decide the best approach for a leader to take based on a given situation and the employees. It assumes the degree of which a subordinate should be involved in the decision process based off of several factors. This theory suggests that the manager should evaluate the situation at hand, then look to the decision tree to show how much participation the employee should have in the decision-making process based on time or decision significance. The leader would be able to determine the best approach based on the two different trees. Vroom's decision tree, time-driven. As you can see, it gives a list is based on whether the problem statement is of high or low significance, and also whether the decision significance is high or low, importance of commitment, leader expertise, likelihood of commitment, group support, group expertise, and team competence. While the development-driven tree is a lot similar, it does yield different results based on your answers. In conclusion, even though a lot of newer concepts still need to be further researched, it shows the development of leadership over time. A lot of old theories stated that there are specific traits or behaviors that leaders had, and most of which were considered to be biological and unchangeable. Though the newer theories are starting to see leadership traits and behaviors as something that changes based on situational factors and individual employees or groups within companies, which I feel is incredibly important. My work site was Organizational Behavior, Managing People and Organizations, 12th edition by Cengage Learning.